Tactics and Practice podcast.
Bonjour! Welcome to The Future Behind Us, a podcast series where I am meeting internationally renowned artists to discuss with them the stories behind works that have become iconic. I will be asking these artists about the technological, the ethical, or even the legal challenges that they have encountered while developing their project. And I will explore in their company how the meaning of their work has changed over these past 5, 10, or 20 years. My name is Régine de Batty. I am a blogger, an art critic, a curator, and my guests in the podcast series are Trevor Paglen, Nora Al-Badri, UBERMORGEN, Gilles Magid, Paolo Pedercini from Molo Industria, Evan Ross, Mediengruppe Bitnik, Sanela Yaich, Pinar Yoldash, and Maya Srekar. In this episode, I am discussing with NetArt pioneers and media hackers Haas and Lúzius Bernhard from UBERMORGEN. Let's go! UBERMORGEN is an artist collective that brings together autistic actionist Haas, aka Liz Haas, and hyperactive visionary Lúzius Bernhard. They have been NetArt pioneers and media hackers since 1995. 5 years later, in 2000, during the presidential race between George Bush and Al Gore, they launched a platform for the trading of electoral votes. Since then, they have, in no particular order, they have compiled a collection of tracks from the golden era of torture music. They shot an AI horror film. They traveled to a Chinese Bitcoin generating factory. They have looked into art washing and Russian military organization Wagner Group. And they also notoriously devised a trilogy of conceptual hacks that subverted the functioning of e-commerce giants. Hello, UBERMORGEN.
Hello, Régine. Salut.
I would like to start with Vote Auction because it is such an iconic work. And okay, just to sum up, voteauction.com was a website that during the 2000 US presidential election campaign offered US citizens the possibility to sell their vote to the highest bidder, and they could do so anonymously. And the attention that Vote Auction received was colossal. There were over 2,500 news media outlets that reported on the project. There was even a 27-minute special on CNN. And then there were 13 US states that issued temporary restraining orders and injunctions for alleged illegal vote trading and consumer fraud. And even the website domain was blocked twice. So my question, I'm sure you've answered it 100 times, but were you expecting, or maybe were you even hoping that the work would receive so much coverage, but also that it would generate so many legal difficulties for you?
Okay, let me try to answer that in the sense of, did we expect that it would get a lot of attention? I can remember that I did a talk in Berlin before this vote auction went viral, as you'd say, like these days. And at the time, I showed the people like just a screenshot of what we were doing, but it was not really public yet, not big time public. And I said, I only told them, okay, this is something, but I'm not going to explain it to you because you're going to hear about this later. And I remember people saying like, oh, but come on, she's so arrogant about that. But but it was very obvious to a certain extent that it was going to get pretty big. Of course, it was not clear how big and how long and what the impact would be of it and all that. But we could kind of feel it under our nails that it was going to be getting a huge amount of attention. Regarding like the repercussions on the legal side, I don't know, Lúzius, what do you think? What did we expect and what didn't we expect? I can remember we didn't think about it.
No, and I, from my point of view, it was very unclear because we got the project in the beginning. It was nothing. It was just a little website by an American student. And we took it over because he was under legal pressure from the New York City Election Committee. And we just hosted it in the beginning, and he was running it through Europe. And then he got out, and then we just kept on doing it. And then it started to explode. The legal impact that it had was, for me, unforeseeable, especially when we learned that the FBI was actually involved, that CIA was also involved, that NSA was probably, or I'm pretty sure they were, they were involved. We know that, but that they were actually intruding into our servers. The problem with these agencies is that they come in and it's very hard to know whether they've been there or not, because they don't want to leave traces. We were hacked several times, but these were more like low-level hackers that just tried to destroy the server, and then we rebuilt it within 2 days. But I didn't expect this kind of 500 million people global audience. And it was a sweet spot in time, because it was when the US were peaking in terms of power. They were the only power. The American presidential election was basically the world presidential election. And that's why it was so important abroad from the US, not only in the country. Yeah, that's why it got so much media.
But did you feel like you were losing control at some point? Like, how much grip did you want, or did you want to have on the narrative of vote auction? Because it looked like it was impossible to control.
Well, I think from our perspective, it was quite the opposite, because there was so much media going on and there was so much attention on it that for us, it was quite observable. If we say A, then a B, C, D is going to happen, because we just had so much data. And I don't mean data, not data that we needed to collect, but just data that we're gathering because we had been speaking to so many journalists and so on. But bearing that in mind, when we do work, we're not interested in controlling a message or anything like that. So, but it goes where it wants to go. It's like, like a river, and like the waters that find their way through the stone and through the earth. But I remember there was this one interview where this guy, I think there was this, it doesn't matter. And the one person said, well, it's a commercial enterprise and that's why it's horrible. And another person said, but it's clearly not a commercial enterprise. It's an artistic project. And then, because how could it be a commercial enterprise if there's no shopping cart on it? So I was like, okay, then I will need to add a shopping cart. And so, then you add a shopping cart. And so the next few days, people will talk about the shopping cart. So once you it seemed like once you have that media's attention, and they were so interested, they were like paparazzi in a way, you could really just feed them food and they were going to pick it up.
It was kind of sorry.
No, what I wanted to say is that it's so interesting, because I didn't, seen from the outside, it was like two artists being bombarded by unwanted or uncontrollable attention. I didn't realize that you were feeding into it and there was some kind of exchange. So that's really funny, actually.
Oh, yeah. No. That was the experiment. That was what it was all about for us. It was, we took the project in, we didn't know it's going to go that big, but we knew that because of the legal situation, that's the most exciting thing about vote auction. It's not basically the artistic expressions that came later, like whatever the representation is, but the actual experiment of doing something that you don't know what is really going to happen. And then to calculate the risk, to say, okay, we are in Europe. The American law doesn't apply in Europe. So we can push it to an edge where we believe that it's ethically okay to go. And then legally, we let them figure it out, because it was a new situation. And that's what was new at the time. It was possible to do these kind of actions over the internet. And it was a unique opportunity in time, and technologically and politically and socially, to do this kind of experiment and to really push it to the utmost edge of the possible and of the thinkable. And it wasn't the only moment I remember where we were not scared, but really taking care of managing the risk was physical. It was like, what can they do with our bodies? Is the FBI going to turn up in Vienna in front of our apartments and kind of threaten us, or, these kind of gray zones? That was the only fear. The rest was just thrill and pushing a communication experiment and a political or social, not a political, a social technological experiment to the max.
But did you have some legal advice right from the start? Someone who help you and guide you in what you could or could not do?
No, that never helps.
Oh God.
If you need to have, and Liz comes from a lawyer family, a legal scholar family. And so you need to have knowledge in the field of the law. You need to know what you can do and what you can't do in order to calculate the risk, obviously. But lawyers will always tell you no. Obviously, that's their job. They will tell you, no, don't do that. That's too much risk. And so
You know what? It reminds me of Tom Cruise when he tells the story. Matt Damon tells the story of Tom meeting Tom Cruise. And he asked him about how he did the stunt where he was running up the wall, outside of the wall to that Burj Hotel in Dubai. And he says, like, I was dreaming about that stunt forever. And then, so I talked to the safety guy and said, like, how do you do this? So the safety guy says, you can't do it. So Tom Cruise says, so I get a new safety guy.
Exactly.
And that's about, like, also with, if you need a lawyer, you don't need lawyers to tell you can't do it. If you have a lawyer, you need a lawyer that helps you get the thing done. But because I have some, legal education, from university and so on, and also I come from a family that's just fired by law. I understand how to think law, but also in the sense of, so it's not scary, but it's something that enables you. And luckily, the freedom of the arts is something that's ranks really high, as much as people like to contest it these days. And so legally, it's not that tragic.
We had a specialist for extradition, for example. Because I'm a U.S. citizen, and we wanted to make sure that that I cannot be extradited to the U.S. That was the only thing, because I was traveling a lot in Bulgaria and not in my homeland, Switzerland. So it wasn't very sure what would happen if the Americans would ask for extradition, if they would keep me, and how that would work. But that was exactly what Liz said. That was a specialist. We asked her for this special thing. She gave us the answers, and we worked with that.
Okay. I have like a small curiosity. Are you allowed to enter the US? Did the work have consequences? Or, for example, do you get flagged and interrogated when you arrive at a US airport because of that?
Not anymore.
Okay.
But for 10 years, we were blacklisted on several different blacklists.
Wow.
And it's very hard to know. Again, you cannot just ask the American government. I mean, who would you ask? Like, am I on a blacklist? They're not going to tell you. So what we did was we used friends that we had that worked in government or in law, in the legal area in the US. And we asked them to ask their contacts. And so all we knew was that we were blacklisted on specific, like no flight blacklists or like entering the country blacklist. And so we knew we couldn't go. And after 10 years, we got the okay from our sources. They told us, now you're good to go. And then the first time entering was kind of scary because, you never know. And then the second time was more scarier because these systems, as we understand, databases and government systems they are slow, right? And they are not all connected. Maybe today they are, but at the time they were not. So for the second entry, it was more tricky, more scary actually, because it was like, okay, now they already had the first entry. So now it's going to happen. If it happens, it's going to happen now. But it didn't. So it was fine.
Okay, I feel like you're going to say no to my next question, but let's see. So voteauction.com was launched in the year 2000 and 2000. Like, in retrospect, now it looks like a sunny, innocent time compared to today, and in particular compared to this year's election, both in the US and in the EU. And not only that, but in 2000, there was no TikTok, no Facebook, no Twitter, no iPhone. Not everybody, at least not that many people had broadband access at home. I remember people were still using fax at work. And no one was familiar or talking about fake news. And yet, I guess your project would be called Fake News today. And I imagine it would snowball and gain authenticity just like it did 24 years ago, and maybe more because now we have social media. But at least that's my impression, and maybe I'm very naive. What do you think? You think that society, government, and the media now are much better equipped to deal with a project like vote auction and maybe dismiss or understand it better?
Well, I think there's two perspectives in that, and maybe come a little bit also from a legal viewpoint right there. And that is the question, is fake news. And you have to say, like, nah, from a legal point of view, it's not really fake news, because we were collecting people that were willing to sell their vote. And we had a huge amount of people who participated in this, and participated also on the side of people were willing to buy votes. So that was not fake. That was a real thing. And yes, there's always the questions like, yes, and we did have enough votes that we could have turned Florida the other way around. So from that perspective, it wasn't fake news. On the other hand, of course, it uses techniques that are also used in today's media techniques, when you use either fake news, alternative facts, and all that kind of thing. But that also relates to the fact that we don't use this kind of media hacking technique in this current media climate, because we would think it would be feeding the wrong dragon. And as to your question, is the mediascape better equipped to deal with things like that? No, a lot worse. And it's the other way around. The media is made for fake news and alternative facts, whatever you want to call it, to exist. It's a perfect breeding ground. It was made only for that, and because of the negatively twirling algorithms and so on. So it's a breeding ground for that, and it was never the media that we have that's governing the media at the moment is not in pursuit of policing fake news at all, but it's feeding from it. It's making its money from it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
This is very depressing, but unfortunately I kind of I'm also not very optimistic about the way the media is going today, and how they need to get attraction and advertisement. Anyway, there was also a curiosity I had about nostalgia, because I hear a lot of nostalgia for the early days of the internet, especially among many of the intellectuals and the artists who are active online in the 90s and early 2000s. When they say that at the time everything was still possible, internet was full of promises, it could still be something that would bring mostly positive opportunities for the many. And over the past 20 years, I've attended several conferences that you gave. I read interviews of you. I've talked with you at some point, but I never sensed any nostalgia from you. Maybe because the conversation never occurred. But do you feel that nostalgia? Do you look back at those early days and think, oh, it was so much easier, better, and simpler compared to today, like some people suggest?
We were just more naive. We were just younger. We were sexier. We were fucking open and fast and naive. And we were never fully naive in the 90s, for example, in terms of the internet. I was very aware that the internet is a place that neoliberal, libertarian, Californian people were declaring as a utopian space in order to keep the government out from regulation. And our understanding was that if the government is kept out and there is no regulation, there's going to be the corporations coming in. So we knew that. Intuitively, we knew that. And we were always working with that. So for me, there is no nostalgia, because that's when it was fucked up. In the 90s, we fucked it up. And that's the consequence now that we have to deal with. Polarizing social media that creates polarized people, that again fuels polarized algorithms and stuff like that. For example, I completely understood Donald Trump, like in his, not why he's doing it, but how he's doing it, and how he learned to use these methodologies, and how he learned to just don't give a fuck about a reality, about anything. Because that's just what you can do. That was just the breaking point in like 2000. That's the vote auction time. That's when it broke. It was still, the mass media was still dominant, and it still is in a way today. It's very weird. Mass media has still a big influence, but it kind of completely became a compound. But to your nostalgia question, no, I'm never nostalgic, because I find this a stupid feeling in a way. I mean, it's nice sometimes to be melancholic, maybe, or sad about things. But to dwell in the past is especially bad for people in our age, because it makes us incompatible with the world. Because we are in power now, but we are not the world anymore. We are not defining tomorrow, but we want to be participating in that in some sense, and bringing in, for example, experience and some kind of knowledge that we have acquired that we will put in. Yeah. So we work with everything that comes along. We love it. We embrace it. We just use it.
I think there is sometimes room for nostalgia, but for us, it's really in the private. So that's rather into the 2000s, like when our children were small, kids, and those things, because that's why I think that's a good place for nostalgia. So you can kind of hang on to your kind of nice memories, and that's always good. But on the big grand scale, I mean, Lúzius in the 90s was doing corporate fascism with eToy. And also my perspective, I remember I was almost wanted to throw up. Like I literally felt sick to my stomach when Ars Electronica took away the net art category and exchanged it for digital communities. Because I mean, what the fuck, digital communities? Even in the 90s, anybody who's honest knows that's not going to work out. When were communities ever something where just people come together happily? It's always toxic, That's how, we're a human race and not like some angel race. I don't know. And so I think, but for us, we have been thinking about this year 2000 and what does it mean and so on. And we came up with that for us, the big kind of point where a lot of the trajectory kind of change is not 9/11 or it's not the Bush and Gore election, but is Genoa, when Marco Giuliani got shot in Genoa, and there was a before and an after. And this is actually what we're doing like a big project about at the moment. And so we're not trying to live in nostalgia, but trying to kind of create different pathways and kind of to see what actually happened, because I think that is important to look at, because we are in a situation now where a lot of people, just like you say, it gives you a lot of negative vibes at the moment. So,
I mean, if you want to be nostalgic, you can be nostalgic about a kind of a unified reality. And that we kind of, I think, had the feeling that we shared that. Although it's bullshit, but we think we shared that. We think we had that. And today this doesn't exist anymore. And we are working for the Busan Biennale. We work on an alternate reality project that Liz mentioned, that the moment that the bullet entered Marco's head in Genoa during the G8 protests, basically time atomized into so many different alternate routes. And then we're going back and forth in creating, and AI tools are super cool to use for this kind of big data work, because you're creating a lot of alternate timelines that are connected to each other and that are connected to locations and artifacts and shit like that. And that's a project for Busan in August.
That sounds very interesting, seen from where I am, which is Italy especially. Mm-hmm. Something I keep encountering in your work is the risk that you are taking. So you were taking risk with Vote Auction. You definitely took a lot of risk with the EKMRZ trilogy, this series of conceptual hacks that targeted Google, Amazon, and eBay. That was also quite bold and risky. And now there is the PMC Wagner Arts, which is on show at KW in Berlin, and it's considered to be very provocative by some people. So why do you expose yourself like that? Is it for the thrill, because you enjoy taking risks, you like making your life more difficult, or do you think it's an essential part of a broader strategy to, I don't know, to make emerge problems with information society that would otherwise remain dormant and invisible? So is it necessary for you to take risk, or is it just fun?
Well, I can say, from my perspective, and here I have to, push the autism thing, really. Life has always been a situation where, from my perspective, randomly people start getting upset. And so I don't really try to not upset people, because I really suck at it. So I can try really hard to not upset people, and they will be upset or don't give a fucking damn. And they're like, oh my God, that's so enjoyable. So I don't get it, So is with the PMC Wagner Arts thing, there is nothing upsetting about the project. There isn't. There's 0 upsetting items in the project. And there's the ways in which people get upset about art per se these days is a kind of a different conversation, one that one can have. But honestly, here, this is for me, it's a bit different to other projects where things were a bit rough, abrasive, and so on. Because if you do like the project like Nazi Line, of course, it's gonna be there's some shit gonna be hitting the fan, but you kind of know how hot the water is to getting yourself into, and you can kind of manage. But with projects like that, it's a few people that have problems with it, but it's like 0.1%.
Okay,
And they're big on Instagram, but the reality is completely different.
Okay,
No.
I'm very happy with it because I really like the project, and then I was found it very strange that people would be shocked by it. So I thought maybe it's because they didn't get the context, or maybe they were younger, they are not used to this kind of way to engage with some issues. So I was wondering, is it a question of context, or is it a question of I don't know. Okay.
We always took huge risks in our career because of this autistic aspect that Liz mentioned, because we don't really understand, and we also don't really care about what happens outside. Because one of my core beliefs is that as an artist, you have to understand that you do what you do, and you should do it as autonomously and as freely as you can. And even if this freedom is an imagination and it's not real freedom, the moment you believe that you're free, you are actually free. It's kind of a self-illusion trick that you can make as a human being, but also especially as an artist. And once you manage to do that, and combined with the autism that just doesn't really understand also sometimes other people and why they react, how they react. So you learn to not really give a fuck, but to really focus on the experiment, to really focus on discovering things. And discovering new things is never only a pleasant thing. It always is always uncomfortable. You always unveil things that are uncomfortable. And PMC Wagner Arts is a special project there because we had so much experience during the situation, because it was a live unfolding situation. But at the same time, the project is basically about freedom of the arts, because the basic construction of the project is, can a corporate structure like PMC Wagner Arts, this weird thing that we set up in a quarterly report on this website combined with AI imagery, can this institution or this corporation use the freedom of the arts to protect their own crimes, for example? Mercenaries as artists, and then in Den Haag to protect themselves. The reaction is always unclear. You never know. We don't provoke. We do provoke, but we don't intend to provoke. That's not the idea. But the reactions are always unclear because it's up to the individual how they perceive it. And we used to do a lot of pixel paintings. And one of the reasons is not only aesthetic and not only from our heritage, basically from where we come from, but it also has something to do because it creates so much empty space, and that creates so much space for projection. And so the audience can project, and that's what they always do. And with Vote Auction, for the first time, we learned, once you release something, you are unable to control the narrative anymore. People will do whatever the fuck they want to do with it. And that's what happens with PMC Wagner's. It's not our agenda. This is agendas of other people that utilize it to do something else with it. That's none of our business, and shouldn't be our issue and problem. It becomes your problem sometimes, obviously.
Yeah, just for anyone who's not familiar with the work, is now exhibited in Berlin. And the name Wagner in PMC Wagner Arts is a reference to the Russian military organization, and not directly to the musician. But yeah, have a look at the website of PMC Wagner Arts. I found it really amusing and full of, it's abrasive. It's a word you used before, but it has a lot of humor because of the character you chose. There's a famous collector. There's Peter Thiel. There's, I think, someone from the Yes Men. Yeah, I have to ask you about the Dick NFT series, which you released a couple of years ago. So, it's a series of NFTs showing small dicks. Well, And there is I think there is a lot of irony and mockery in that series. While clicking around, I found the text that says, I'm going to quote you, every dick is sacred, every dick is great. If a dick is wasted, bros get quite irate. Every dick is wanted, every dick is good, every dick is needed in your neighborhood. So why did UBERMORGEN want to engage with NFT? Because there is, or at least there was, a lot of debates among artists about NFTs, where some associated NFTs with absolutely everything that is wrong with the art market, and others that just see it as a way to finally make money with digital art. So why NFT?
I mean, it's a really cheesy answer, but it's like, why not NFT? I don't see an argument to not do it. So I'll still try to give a few arguments why to do it, I guess. It was fun in that year. Was it 21 or 22? I don't remember. To do some NFTs. It was some nice groove. It got a lot very quickly. But so it's fun, Lost, it's enjoyable. So that's a good argument for something. People should do things that are fun. It makes for a good vibe. And the more people that carrying good vibes, the better, That's the one thing. And the other thing is the one thing that's really nice about doing NFTs for people like us, because we work on really big projects usually, is that you can also do things that are quite just, I like this idea, let's just produce it and throw it out there, and it hasn't to be part of a big huge thing. It's just this one pixel thing or whatever out there. That's also how the dicks got started, because I made this series of don't buy this NFT. And I just make one more or less shitty NFT every day. Some of them are really nice, some of them are really whatever happened that day. And also that's when I made one of those sticks one day, and then people were like, oh, can you make more of those? So I figured, okay, then I'll make a series of the dicks. And of course it's a really good way to have it to have a NFT a dick, because finally people, you can send around dick pics that way without being offensive, which is important. You can talk about dicks. You can use it as a really authentic portrait of yourself. And for me, it's like I can either just bitch about the craziness that the NFT market is yet another one that's just a huge fucking bro zone, or you can just have my fun with it. And me being an artist, I think if there is a job that I have, then it is to make art with topics that I think either are interesting or fucking off or whatever, just and not be verbal about it, but I rather make art about it.
But there were really nice sub scenes in the NFT world. It's still going on. It's for me, the most important thing was that it's a new medium. It literally is a new medium, and that was so wonderful. It combined basically the need for commodification of digital art in some way, some idea how to do it, and you just have to try out this shit. I mean, you can't make it perfect in the first thing, But then I understood, oh, fuck, it's actually a new medium. It's not just a short video that you do or just a picture. It's actually the NFT itself becomes a medium. And also it's completely interchangeable. So the non-fungible part, the non-part becomes actually fungible for me. If you look at the greater scale of NFTs, this shit is exchangeable. It's interchangeable. But look at the art world and you understand that this shit is interchangeable, because it doesn't matter who has the big blockbuster show at the MoMA or at the Pompidou. It doesn't really matter, because in the end, it's about tickets, it's about media, it's about this kind of shit. And it could be this name or could be another person. Doesn't matter. And in the end, it's in the whole art world, it is like that, you have your personal preferences and shit like that. But if you look at it systematically, it's all interchangeable. And for me, that was the beauty of it, like to call it non-fungible, but in a way to create a currency. And Damien Hirst brought it, spot on with his currency project, because that is the ultimate NFT project, because it says exactly that. It's just a currency.
That's funny you bring Damien Hirst, because I agree with you, but it's the one guy you really don't want him to be right. And one anecdote about NFT, I don't remember who it was, but it was a curator who told me there was this show and there was a short video, and it was a she actually, and she told me, young people, like schools who come to visit the show, when they see the short video, they ask me, they think it's an NFT. But that was a couple of years ago, because everything in the art was about NFT. So maybe this is a nice way to end the discussion. NFT, Damien Hirst, I don't know. But
Sure.
Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Liz and Lúzius. If you're not...
Regine, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, for me too. We need to catch up in real life somewhere at some point.
Yes, we will.
Okay, if you're not familiar with UBERMORGEN's work, check out their website, ubermorgen.com. Thank you, merci, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. The Future Behind Us is a podcast series conceived and conducted by me, Regine Debatty, for the 25th edition of the Pixel Point Festival curated by Aksioma Institute for Contemporary Art as part of Go 2025 Nova Gorica Gorizia European Capital of Culture. Thank you to Yanis fucking Yansha for the invitation to take on this challenge and for his precious collaboration and assistance in the curatorial process. Thank you also to Marcela Okritic for the impeccable coordination. The editing, the music, and the audio post-production are all by Gasper Torkar. Next week, I will be speaking with artist, writer, and filmmaker Gilles Magid about establishing intimate relations with systems of power, being censored by the Dutch Secret Service, and blurring the boundaries between art and life. All episodes are available at aksioma.org/podcast, on the website of the Pixel Point Festival, and on all major podcast platforms by typing Tactics and Practice in the search bar. For more information on the context, the participants, and the partners involved, see the link in the description. That's it for now. Bye everyone. Au revoir.